Hi and welcome to Coaches on the Couch, your relationship specialists exploring human behaviour. My name is Sharon Page and this is Phil Pollard, and our topic for today's episode is teenage depression.
Look, it's a topic, Sharon, that is often not spoken about. You know, we hear the results and we see the results, but quite often it's really just hushed up. You know, so it's great that we're speaking about it. I've done a lot of work in remote communities, and it's really rife in the remote communities. And again, it brings a lot of, it's associated with shame.
Okay.
So it's the whole tradition of shame is that if you bring shame to yourself, you bring it to the whole family.
Wow.
And I think that's what happens in the younger students of today as well. They have this, well, I'm not performing as well as I'd like to in my life. And then they start to put pressure on themselves, and so they think the easiest way now is an out. But I'm being very general with that, of course.
Of course.
Because it's a whole lot of things that go on with teenage depression, and I'm not the expert. We've got an expert coming up later, very early on the show, and she's going to be great to chat with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that a lot of what I find where the depression tends to come from is a lot of the external environments. Teenagers these days spend so much time on social media. And constantly living in this world of comparisons, you know, and also just the social acceptance.
Yeah, and even magazines you pick up, it's like, well, I've got to look like this, and if I'm not, well, maybe I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
That little voice in our heads that never shuts up, the one that says I'm not good enough, that can lead to some horrible things, right? We've all had that thought. It's just, it's not a real thought.
And how about the role of the parent that's looking after a child that has depression? Because you know, you mentioned before, it's often not spoken about. What I found in the past, working with some people, that the teenager doesn't want to talk about their problems. Well, they don't want to talk about it with their parents, and the parents are often caught in this, oh, I don't know how to tackle this situation. I want to help my child, but how do I go about it?
Yeah, and it's sometimes the student or the child doesn't want to talk about it either, because there's that whole feeling of embarrassment, and that's where the withdrawal. And you know, I've spoken to parents who have had to, has been come to me as clients, and they say, well, we just didn't see it coming, didn't know about it. And it's because it's not spoken about it. But it all starts, I think every piece of depression starts in your head.
Yeah, of course.
And it's just getting that, you know, with the whole thing with life's about you, and they're comparing themselves, and that's all we're doing. So I think the more people think about themselves, the more they tend to be depressed. So it's like getting out of your head and looking outside of yourself. And you know, I'm encouraging students, youths, teenagers to really have a chat, even if it's with their friends.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, it's an experience where you've got, you need the external help to help you, because it's getting it out, that's where the difference will make.
That's right. And we've actually got a guest coming on now, Helen.
Oh, look, and Helen's amazing. She's a clinical hypnotherapist and a master NLP practitioner. And she's an international speaker. She's the author of a book called Mindset Dominance. She's dedicated to raising the profile of hypnotherapy industry so that hypnotherapists can be recognised for the amazing and life-changing work that they do. Now, as a founder of HypnoFit, she's helped thousands of people who were suffering from the debilitating effects of depression, anxiety and weight issues. So I want you to please welcome Helen Mitas to the couch.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks for being here, Helen.
Thanks very much.
Tell us a little bit about hypnotherapy, because there are perceptions around it, and a little bit, like a bit of an insight into what you do.
Okay, all right.
You're not going to turn me into a chicken or anything.
That's what everybody says. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do, is break down the myths surrounding hypnotherapy, because it's not woo-woo crazy stuff. Of course we've got stage hypnosis, but that's there for entertainment. And the beauty about hypnotherapy is that it is therapy. And so it's all about accessing the subconscious mind. We all have one. And it's not, you know, something silly to access the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind has all our emotions, all our values, all our habits. And with hypnotherapy, we go straight there. We bypass the conscious mind and go straight to the subconscious mind, where all the decisions are made.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's funny because people say, oh, I can't be hypnotised.
Yes.
And you know, ask them if they watch TV. And they say, yeah, I do.
Yes.
And it really is the same thing. You see people zone out, and you get lost in movies,
yes.
and you know, especially movies.
Exactly.
Because your unconscious doesn't know, subconscious doesn't know if you're watching a movie and you still get frightened or have a laugh at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It's happening anyway.
Exactly.
We get hypnotised anyway.
Because if you were watching a movie with your conscious mind, you wouldn't enjoy the movie because you'd be saying, that's not true, that's just Tom Cruise. I know what's really happening.
Yes.
You wouldn't enjoy it. So your conscious mind goes away, floats away, and your subconscious mind watches the movie and says, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And that means that reality is just suspended for that moment in time, and your subconscious mind is watching that movie.
Isn't that cool?
It's the thing I've noticed about the unconscious mind is it gets in early. It really starts early.
Yeah.
You know, if you're driving down the road or see a big yellow M somewhere, straight away you've got associated with something. It's like, well, hang on, no one said anything. What's going on with my unconscious mind? So that knows what the golden arches mean. And kids know it. Oh, they get in early. So advertisers are really smart about using hypnotherapy, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
The topic of discussion today is teenage depression.
Yes.
The clients that you're working with, you mentioned to us earlier that it was teenagers, is that right?
Yes, so I do help people that suffer from depression for all age groups, ranging from anything from age of 13 all the way to 87 years old. But in terms of who I love and where my heart sings, it's that age group between 15 and 25, so teenagers to young adults, yes.
Excellent. And how do they go about finding you?
Well, it's usually their mum that finds me. Yeah, because it's usually the mum that is just beside themselves because their teenager is not going to school as often, has left their part-time work, is isolating themselves from their friendships, all these sort of things that bring the parents to despair, and they're prepared to do anything to help their child.
Absolutely, of course you would. And before we brought you onto the show, I'd mentioned parents do become a little bit stuck at times with teenagers that are suffering from the depression. They don't know how to reach out to them. I'm thinking maybe we hold that thought for now and have that discussion after the break, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, of course.
Yeah, great.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with Helen after this break.
Hi and welcome back to Coaches on the Couch, your relationship specialists exploring human behaviour. Today's topic of discussion is teenage depression, and we have Helen here with us today to discuss this topic. And there was a question I asked you before we led to the break, and it was around how do parents engage teenagers when they are suffering from depression?
Yeah, and that's a very good question, and quite a difficult answer in the sense that there is no one right answer because everyone's different. But one way is just to really just get rid of the expectations and get rid of that tone in terms of accusing the teenager of not performing or not doing, and just ask the question: how are you going? How are you feeling about this? And what can we do to help, so that they're offering themselves to help.
Yep. Because quite often I've had parents come to me and say that, we've tried this and we've tried that, we've tried sending them to counsellors, we've tried sending them to psychologists, but nothing is working. How do I get my teenager to engage interest in themselves and want to get past this?
Yeah, and the thing is, the timing has to be right. And so they have to be ready for change. That's because sometimes they're not ready for change, and they actually subconsciously are very comfortable in their bubble that they've created for themselves. And so they need to be ready to step outside that bubble to have that conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I think what you said before was perfect, because if a parent is fully accepting and open, and without that judgment call and without the pressures, because they're the two things that kids get from their parents. Yeah. And it could be from small things, even like getting the room done, let alone getting your homework done. If they can back off of those things when they notice something's not happening, and just be that place of it, because that's the definition of love, is full acceptance.
That's right.
And bringing kids into the world, we only have one duty, and that's to love them, which is being fully accepting of how they are, and a guide as well. Yep. So the perfect guide would be just to be that acceptance. Yeah. And knowing that if you pictured an iceberg, the unconscious mind is probably 90% of that, if not more, would you say? Probably closer to 95. Yeah. The unconscious mind, which is our habits and our patterns and our routines, that's what drives people.
Exactly.
And that's what you work with, isn't it?
Absolutely, I do.
So you want to see hypnotherapy as the go-to, as opposed to, if I'm feeling depression, I go to the doctors.
That's my absolute mission. And what I want is people to think of hypnotherapists first. And the reason being is that mindset is such a huge part of anxiety, depression, self-sabotaging behaviours when it comes to weight loss and so on. But instead what happens is that they go to the GP and they tend to get a quick fix because they want a quick fix. But it's not a quick fix, it's just a band-aid approach, and the issues are still there. And it doesn't resolve the underlying issues. And, you know, the thing is that medication does have a place in society. I'm not one of these people that's anti-medication, not at all. It certainly has a place, but it shouldn't be the first resort. It should be the last resort. The first resort is to help our people, our teenagers, our adults, everybody to access their own natural resources so they can live their full potential naturally and safely without medication and without the side effects of medication.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense because when you think of our three parts, our mind, body and soul, the mind is the one that's controlling us. And, well, I should say that's what happens when we're in depression. It controls us. But it's our self, our real self, that keeps wanting to make the change and doesn't always work. So that's where hypnotherapy comes in, because you can get past the mind and get to speak with yourself, the all-knowing self, that can assist you into controlling the mind.
That's right.
Because it's all mindset or mind control as opposed to being external features.
Yeah,
exactly.
Even just the word depression, how that gets thrown around, what tends to happen with people that identify themselves as being depressed, they actually identify themselves as a depressed person. So therefore they lose themselves within that label, I guess.
Absolutely. And what I have found through my own experience is that the moment they're diagnosed, that's when they just dip in terms of just allowing themselves to be taken over by depression. And I want to be the first person that says depression is real, it exists. I experienced it 20 years ago myself. And you do feel helpless, you do feel hopeless, you feel like there's no way out. But it is a program, it's a thinking pattern that occurs over and over and over again. It doesn't define you, it's not who you are, which is exactly what you said, it's not your identity. But they take it upon themselves that that's who I am, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, and they live to that label. And so one of the very first things that we do is just dismantle that label. And I make it very clear to both parents and children, teenagers, that labels don't mean anything to me, it's just a label. And so we move beyond that label and start working out what that program is that's running in the background that needs to be rerun.
That's perfect. So how did you deal with your depression?
Okay, so with myself, when I got depression about 20 odd years ago, I was in a situation where I needed to end my first marriage, and that went against my values because I was a believer in family. I had a little boy at the time. And there was no logical reason for me to end the marriage. Like my mother said, he wasn't an alcoholic, he didn't hit me, he didn't gamble, so what was my problem, right? But what
From the surface, that might be something.
Exactly, because people don't understand. And what was going on inside me was that I had become this different person and he hadn't, and I needed that change and I needed to do it, but I didn't think it was possible because of my own self-constraints. And so I did feel stuck and like I couldn't move. So back then there was no Google, and so I was reading a newspaper one day and it said, are you feeling helpless, hopeless, like everybody is trying to run your life except you? And I thought, oh my God, that's exactly how I feel, and I can't believe that somebody else understands exactly how I feel. I thought I was alone.
Wow.
I didn't know that people felt like this. And so I contacted the institution that put that ad out. It took about 4.5 years, but it made me into the person that I am today. And I received help and assistance from a clinical psychologist who was also a hypnotherapist. But at the time in the state of Victoria, it was illegal to say that you practice hypnotherapy. And so I didn't even know that. I didn't know it was hypnotherapy. I was told it was guided imagery, which is a technique that's used within hypnotherapy.
There you go. Now, Helen, thank you very much for sharing that story. We're just about to go to a break.
Yep.
We've got a viewer email coming up. Would you like to stick around and help us out with that email?
Yes,
awesome.
Definitely.
Excellent.
Great. So we'll be straight back after this break. Stay with us.
Hi and welcome back to Coaches on the Couch, your relationship specialist exploring human behaviour. We have Helen with us today with our topic of discussion, teenage depression, and we also have a viewer email from Jane in Doncaster. Phil.
And Jane writes, "Hi Sharon and Phil, I have a teenage daughter who in the last 6 months has become completely withdrawn from school life and me altogether. She spends a lot of time in her room on social media, and when I come in to see how she is, or even just have a conversation with her, she yells at me and tells me to get out of her room. I hear her crying at night, but she won't open up to me. She says that she doesn't want to talk and tells me to leave her alone. The friends she used to associate with have stopped coming over, so I fear she has lost all her friends or is being bullied at school. She hardly eats anything and is thin as a rake, and I'm concerned about her. I don't know how to get her to open up to me. I've tried getting her to a counsellor, but she doesn't want to have a bar of it. She says she doesn't like talking about her issues. She'd rather just deal with them on her own. What should I do? Is there a way that I can get her to open up or talk to me?" And this is from Jane. Yeah, so is there a way you think that she could get
Absolutely.
her daughter?
And well done, Jane, for reaching out for assistance with this, because we were talking about this earlier. It can be tricky if you tried all the tools in the book and nothing seems to be working. So well done for writing in.
Yeah.
What can you say about this, Helen?
So first of all, I'd just like to say, Jane, that my heart really goes out to you. There is nothing harder than seeing the parent and how they suffer because their children are suffering. So it's really, really hard. Secondly, what I'd like to say is that one of the things that teenagers value is confidentiality. And that's one of the very first things that I tell them right from the start, is that what I want you to know is that whatever goes on between me and you, we're not going to tell anybody. I said, even if your mum asks me how you're going, I'm not going to say. She's going to have to ask you. They need to know that they're safe and they can say anything, because there's a number of things that could be going on that you don't need to know, but you do want to see her have a positive outcome. And so what I would suggest is that you tell her that. I don't need to know what's led you to this point, but I'm really distressed that you're distressed because I love you so much. And so is there a way that you could speak to someone where it's going to be completely confidential? I don't need to know what you discuss in that session. It's going to be between you and one other person, because all I want for you is to feel happy again. That's all I need to know. So, just because that teenager, it's coming across that there's something going on that she doesn't want to share with her mother or her father, and she needs to know that she's safe. She's in a safe place, and that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just adding to that too, Helen, I myself suffered depression quite early on into my life. I can have memories back to the earlier stages of 4 and 5, moving on through to my teenage years. And bless my mother's heart. Thank you very much, Mum, for everything that you did for me. But back then when I was a teenager, I found that Mum she cared for me so much, and she could see something was going on. It's very similar to this story. And Mum tried everything. She tried having the conversations with me. She tried getting counsellors out to the house, but it was just like nothing was working. And for me personally, experiencing that, I found that if anything, I just closed off even more. I just wanted to have my space and just deal with it myself, and sort of work through my issues. And also, having someone coming in all the time saying, there's something wrong with you. You already know that you're going through stuff, and then to have someone external, like your mother, coming in and saying, what's wrong, it felt, for me, it was a lot more trickier to deal with.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and just hearing what Helen said, that advice she gives to the mum, because, I don't know how your mum was being at the time, but that conversation that you said that the mother can have with the daughter is perfect, where you say, hey, it's not with me, it's with someone else, but just come and talk to someone else who will hold the trust, hold that space. It's completely confidential, and you don't need to know, like as a mother, you don't need to know what's really going on, but what you want is the best for your kids.
Exactly,
right.
exactly.
So I'm interested, how did you get your breakthrough, Sharon?
Gee, it didn't come to much later in life for me, but what I found really helped was, I guess, reaching out. Reaching out to coaches when I got into the coaching industry, but modelling who I wanted to become. That really assisted me. I had this idea of who I was and where I'd be in the future, but it wasn't resonating with me at the time. So I started to model behaviours that I really wanted within my life.
So you got it by being coached.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what Helen's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
We love that. And so with your business, you do more than just coaching, hypnotherapy.
Yes. Well, I've got different segments in terms of clients, and one segment are hypnotherapists themselves.
Yes.
And so it is my mission to have hypnotherapy accepted globally. And so that's where I have spoken in the US early on this year, New Zealand, and I'm finding that the same issues that we have in Australia are everywhere. And so I want to raise the profile of hypnotherapists everywhere. That's what I want. So I've got one market segment that is hypnotherapists, and then we've got people that are depressed, and teenagers within that. And then of course there are weight loss clients who are usually depressed. So they come for weight loss, but there's underlying issues that are holding them back from achieving their goals.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And just hearing what you're saying there about people with weight issues being depressed, totally agree. Like everyone who's come to me about that on a coaching perspective, I've noticed exactly that. And there was a saying that we got from one of our guests earlier on in one of the early episodes when she said, you can't hate yourself enough to get the body you want.
Yeah.
You've got to love who you are right now and accept it. And because if you're not, you're going to be depressed.
That's right.
Like you really will be. About every time you look in the mirror, you're going to go, "Oh my God, that's hideous. I don't want to look in the mirror." To love yourself as you are now, and that's probably, getting that coaching to be that.
Exactly, because people think that they will love themselves once they've lost weight, but it's the other way around. You've got to love yourself to lose the weight. Yeah.
That's
beautifully
so
said.
true.
Yep. Now, if we were to summarise some key takeaways for today's episode, would you like to add anything?
Yes. Look,
Helen?
one of the things that's really, really important in terms of teenage depression is the fear of failure and the fear of making mistakes. So if I can leave you with anything, it's to tell the teenagers and adolescents and young adults out there that mistakes are important. You need to make them because that's the only way we're going to grow as people. That there is no such thing as a perfect person. Everybody else appears to be perfect because that's what they show on social media, but they're not. And you need to make those mistakes, and the mistakes are going to help you to be the person that you need to be in terms of your future self.
Perfectly said, Helen.
Yep.
Thanks very much for coming on today's show. You have been such an inspiration, I'm sure, to the viewers. And until the next episode, if you would like to know more about today's show, you can head on over to coachesonthecouch.com. And if you would love to have some challenges dealt with on Coaches of the Couch, you can contact us through the website as well.
So coachesonthecouch.com, hit that contact us button and you can please send us in your email. Yep.
That's it for today's episode. Thanks for watching Coaches on the Couch, and we look forward to seeing you next week.